I'm over here.
Hold on a sec.
Awesome.
There we go.
All right, good evening, everyone. First, thank you, Mayor Ross, for joining us. Also, Councilmember Benson, thank you. And it's good to see everyone. You'll have to bear with me. This will be the first one that I'm helping to lead, but I guess, again, thank you for joining us. And I'll go ahead and do a call to order and proceed on to roll call. So I'm not sure what the formal verbiage is for that, but calling this Planning Commission meeting to order here on March 7th. For the roll call, we'll see if Commissioner Maruziak shows up, is able to make it. Going down the list, Commissioner Aliff.
Here.
Commissioner Goodman.
Here.
I see you. Awesome. Commissioner Lambert.
Here.
Commissioner Mather. I don't see him on the list. Hopefully he joins here. And then Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. It looks like the first item is agenda approval. So looking at what was sent out, we'll open up for public comments. It looks like the election of chair and vice chair is the erroneous entry. We'll look at the council liaison report and then look at the minutes from the February 7th meeting and hopefully approve those. And then looks like we have no permit review or design review board actions to take in this meeting, but we do have a downtown relook discussion to continue. And then also looking at the comprehensive plan, docket and work plan, which has been a work in progress for several meetings. We'll then look at any other business and follow up accordingly. And that should be it for the agenda. And then I have to vote on that. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, so what you're going to be looking for, Chair, is you'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Once there's a motion on the floor, you can take commission discussion on it. If any, following discussion, you can vote on it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
All right, so moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion is seconded. Awesome.
So, Chair, a request, even though I'm not a member of the commission, would be to remove the comprehensive plan, docket, and work plan item from tonight's agenda. Unfortunately, I did not have a chance to complete the agenda materials needed for that in a timely fashion. So, there's unfortunately that one's not ready for tonight. It will definitely return on the 21st.
Perfect. Okay, understand. And does that have to be voted on as well?
As part of your agenda approval.
Okay. All right. So we have a slight edit to the agenda there with the removal of the comprehensive plan, docket, and work plan discussion. So with that modification, again, I ask, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Aliff. And seconded?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Lambert. So moved. All right. Let's see. All right, with the agenda approved, I see we have 3 attendees with us. Do we have any comments for the commission?
Excuse me, Chair. I think, well, there's 2 hands up. I guess you'll need to hold an actual vote on the motion.
Okay.
Proceeding.
Thank you.
So you can ask for all those in favor, list wait, then all those opposed, and then we can call the results of the vote following that.
Okay. All right. There it is. So all those in favor of the modified agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all opposed, say nay. All right, the ayes have it. All right. And for any of the hands, okay, thank you, we're good. All right, if we're good, we'll move on to public comments then. And I see Ms. Shepherd, your hand is up.
All right, so 1 second. All right, Ms. Shepherd, you should be able to unmute. I've got a timer. I'll start running for you here too when you're ready.
Okay. When the question came up before your meeting started about whether you can forward email, when I was on council, one of the trainings that they gave new city council members is having to do with the Public Records Act, and is something that I believe is required for planning commissioners. And it's really not that laborious to do it. You can do it online. But also, if you're not aware, the commissioners do have access to what they call MRSC, Municipal Research Services. And I would highly encourage you, if you're not familiar with it, to go to mrsc.org and see what is available there. But you can also ask experts questions at that site. That's all I have.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Shepherd. I was not aware of that. Any other comments? All right. Hearing none, we will move on then. Thank you for that. And Ms. Lutz.
Or you should be able to.
I think you're
Ms.
on
Lutz.
mute.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that Jason Rogers is now showing me the time clock. Is somebody going to talk over me now and violate my civil rights like they did in the last meeting? I'm sorry, I guess that was Matt Lassay who was violating my civil rights, talking over me in the last meeting. I noticed that, which is a common factor right now, that the Attorney General's office is dealing with for the city of Snoqualmie, just to keep on the radar for all of you. Violating civil rights is on the Attorney General's docket right now for the city of Snoqualmie. And you can talk with Catherine Ross and James Whitney Mayhew and Bob Sturbank about the problems that the city of Snoqualmie has been having for a long time violating rights. So the first thing you might want to do is open up your citizen comment periods back to 5 minutes. Before James Whitney Mayhew and Catherine Ross came around to constrict citizens' comments, because they really don't care about the citizens. They're interested in blocking citizens' rights. So I live downtown and I have for 17 years, and I think I probably know the town a lot better than Catherine Ross or James Whitney Mayhew because of the comments they've made over the last several years in public meetings about the water table and all kinds of other things that demonstrate that they're either liars or they don't know anything about the town. So we have on there tonight the downtown relook. And I'd like to talk about the look of downtown that is going on, specifically with that revetment, the waste of $3.5 million. That's about a block from my house. And the fact that I didn't get any proper public notice for that project, nor did I get proper public notice for the project that happened in front of my house on Falls Avenue, nor are we getting proper public notice for anything going on downtown. So I am here to talk about the downtown relook. And I would like to say, go ahead and look downtown, Catherine Ross and James Whitney Mayhew, because you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Thank you for that, Ms. Lux. Did you have anything else?
Looks like she concluded her
No?
comment.
Okay. Thank you. Get back to participants view here. I see. Okay. Did you have another comment, Ms. Lux? I'm sorry. I see your hand.
Typically, Chair, we allow commenters to have to address the commission once, and then we move on to either the next person, or if there are no more persons, then we move on to the next agenda item.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, both Ms. Shepherd and Ms. Lux for your comments. With that, we'll go ahead and close the public comment session and move on to the council liaison report.
Greetings, Commission. So I have two items that I want to make sure that you are aware of. The first was about the decision by the council to request that the state begin to take over the maintenance of Snoqualmie Parkway. And that was mostly because the vast majority of the damage that is done to that road is caused by trucks that are rolling over it, that are essentially using Snoqualmie Parkway as an extension of Highway 18. So essentially what we're doing is requesting the state to designate Snoqualmie Parkway as a part of Highway 18. That will probably save us a great deal of money when we're not the ones that are causing most of the damage. It only makes sense that we would not be saddled with the burden of paying to resurface it and repave it, etc. So that was kind of the big item that we did at our last council meeting. And the other thing that I just want to let you folks know, since you are the Planning Commission, is that we also approved the King County countywide planning policies. I may be mistaken, but I believe that those are presented to the Planning Commission. Is my memory correct, either Mr. Gamble or Mr. Rogers? Or is it only CDC?
You got it, Dylan?
No, I was going to leave it to you.
Oh, I'm trying to go through my memory. I know they're presented to CD committee.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. Well, anyway, regardless. So what they are is essentially just a set of policies, planning policies that were laid down by King County, and cities could either agree or to approve them, or they could do nothing, which would have the same effect, or they could reject them. And we decided to approve them. And what they lay out is some growth targets for the city to meet in terms of population and housing and jobs and those sorts of things. So there wasn't really anything where we could, line item veto things that we disagreed with or whatever. It was just a strict up or down vote. Do we agree or disagree? So anyway, I just wanted to let you folks know about that item. But that's all that I have for you folks in terms of an update. I'll be happy to take questions and then probably bounce them off to Mr. Campbell and Mr. Rogers.
Councilmember Johnson, what was the council's ultimate vote on that? I know it was advisory, I guess, in nature, but. Yeah,
essentially, yeah. We voted to approve. I believe it was.
I can clarify that a little bit if you'd like, Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, go ahead.
But so there's under an interlocal agreement between King County and the various cities in King County. The countywide planning policies first go through there's a lot of steps, but ultimately they are recommended by the Growth Management Planning Council to the King County Council. The County Council would then take action to approve them. Then they go to the cities for what's called ratification. And so the city's action is the city can ratify them as a whole. They can take no action, which ultimately has the same effect as approving them. Or the city could could disapprove them. And usually if they disapprove them, they express specific objections. Snoqualmie has done that in the past. There have been some objections to some of the annexation policies in the countywide planning policies. So this city on its own, it's a small component of King County. The standard for ratification is at least 40% of the jurisdictions representing at least 70% of the population need to ratify. So it's designed such that, Seattle, Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond hypothetically couldn't just cram it down our throats. They have to pass muster with the vast majority of King County. So does that help provide a little better answer for that?
I think that's great context. Yeah, that's super helpful.
Sure, certainly.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I see Commissioner Goodman followed by Commissioner Aliff have their hands up.
All right.
Thanks. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go for it, Commissioner Goodman.
Thanks, Commissioner Johnson. So did I hear you right that Snoqualmie, that the city, approved or agreed to ask the state, but that the state has not actually approved that? And if so, do we have any idea what the likelihood of that actually occurring is?
That would be up to essentially the administration to negotiate with the state. It's probably a fairly high probability that it would happen, but you are correct that it is not a unilateral decision. They would have to agree to whatever terms the administration comes up with for them to take that on.
Thank you.
Commissioner Aliff.
I don't want to rehash the entire conversation that happened in city council, but is there just some way for me to catch up? So if anybody asks any questions, I can answer them.
Sure. The easiest thing to do is if you find the most recent city council agenda packet, that will have the agenda bill in question attached to it. I'm also scribbling a note here to just send that around to the planning commission for informational purposes.
Okay. I can Google. I'm good. So
okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks. I actually didn't quite follow the question, so thank you, Mr. Rogers. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, and I think you're doing a great job, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Councilmember Johnson. You're very kind. We appreciate the update. Okay. Thank you for the council liaison report. Moving on, it looks like we have approval of the previous commission meetings minutes on February 7th. I guess we'll start out with a motion to approve and then proceed for any comments from there. Is that accurate? All right.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
All right. All right. So moved. Seconded.
Second.
Thank you. All right. So good conversation in our last meeting. Obviously, that was the beginning of the most recent discussions on the downtown relook, and then the first of the potential modifications to the comprehensive plan docket and following up on that work plan. Were there any specific comments or observations from the other commissioners? All right. All right. Hearing none, then I'll put it to a vote to approve the minutes from the 7th of February. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, ayes have it, and so moved. All right. All right. Moving on. Again, nothing on the permit review or design review board. So looking at legislative policy items and regulations, the downtown relook, open that up for discussion. I believe that goes to you, Mr. Rogers. Or is that Mr. Gamble?
Actually,
Okay.
I see Mr. Gamble tonight.
All right.
Yeah, so I guess real quick, does anyone have any comments before I get going? I'm gonna start to share my screen and then I won't be able to see anything. So while I wait for that, I'll get my page loaded up and ready to share. All right. Okay, that was your last chance. I'm going now. Okay, just make sure everyone can see my screen share.
Looks
Okay.
good. On my-
All right, so just as a quick refresher of the concept of the downtown relook is some slight code modifications that would have quick and succinct impact in a positive way to the downtown, historic downtown area. So the idea is to review a couple code sections, and the goal in the beginning was to figure out how other cities, perform that same code section. We would kind of, take the best ideas, bring them into our code sections. And in order to do that, I created this worksheet, and the worksheet kind of helps us guide the process as we go through. So as you recall from the last meeting where we discussed downtown relook, there's three kind of main conversation points. There's the street furniture here. So as you'll see on the document, it's all red because that means that that's the sections we're going to remove. And instead, we're going to replace it with this section, which mostly comes from City of Chelan's code language. And as you all know, we worked through this, so I don't want to rehash everything a million times, but we've worked through this. The blue is the changes that we're going to, we would like to see added in place of, if it's black, that means that we're just keeping exactly what Chelan wrote. And, usually it's blue because we have to change it to make it make sense for our code. It doesn't exactly trace perfectly and the words have to match up. So moving forward a bit into the site planning, and this is going to include a lot of details about, and I'll just scroll down to this green section here. In previous meetings, we discussed how to best capture the concept of like screening, waste facility screening, or in this section here, it's services, loading and waste enclosures screening, and then it involves a couple other details too. And the Planning Commission sought, a way to envision this in the code. So I pulled a couple of different cities' code language that referred to this and tried to capture and encapsulate all the ideas that I'd heard in all the meetings, and we kind of landed on Issaquah's. I'm gonna forget it. Let me scroll down. It's Issaquah's central plan. Some of their site standards. So I plucked all those as best I could. I brought it up into our code section here. I nixed item D, which is was previously the only detail talking about mechanical and electrical equipment screening and covers, and instead replaced it with the Issaquah's details, and they're all in green here. You will notice probably if you were to go and look word for word to the Issaquah plan below here, that the green is not exactly word for word. I have modified it to make it make sense. For example, Issaquah's plan never references Snoqualmie's municipal code. I just corrected it for, sensibility. So I hope you had a chance to kind of like read through it, but we have looked at the Issaquah plan before, but kind of catch you on all the big themes and concepts here. You'll see that there's conversations about screening for trash receptacles and utility equipment. It has some details that I think are pretty developed. For instance, having screening that's effective in the winter and the summer. Concepts like that were pretty thorough in the screening of utility features and things like that. And then above, you'll see that they have a lot of like waste enclosure details that are pretty, I don't know, they're considerate, they're thoughtful, and I think they're well written in such a way that going forward, asking businesses to follow this structure is not egregious, onerous, and it is rather sensible. So I'll leave it here, but I want to say just one quick thing, which is that there's the third section, which is about definitions. So don't let me forget it, but I want to pause here and hear some feedback on how this is written, if it meets the kind of intent that we all had for this code section, and if you see any moments where I mistyped or did something wrong there, please let me know, and I can correct it right here. So I'll go ahead and pause and stop talking. So
I'm I'm not
Go
sure if
ahead.
I can see everyone. Were there any questions, Commissioner?
Chair, I could also suggest that prior to the commission discussion on this item, you could, if you wish, take public comment. You certainly heard from Ms. Lux had some comments on the historic downtown relook item during the general public comment period, but it would certainly be appropriate. I believe Ms. Shepherd has her hand up and she has not had a chance to offer any comments so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's open it up for comment, and we can start with Ms. Shepherd.
Also, Chair, I apologize for interjecting. I'm not trying to step on your toes as
Please.
Chair, but I would also remind, this is a reminder for both the commission and for members of the public that at this point we're taking public comment on this item and not on other items, whether they're on the agenda or not. So we would ask the comments be focused on this agenda item and not on other topics. So
Thank you. Very good.
Hi.
Ms. Shepherd, please.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to comment on is that it would be nicer for the public to be able to comment after the presentation, which Jason just mentioned. That's really all I had to say.
Thank you. Ms. Lux.
give me 1 second here. I've got to get her. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. That's very important. I think that the public is able to comment after the presentation is made, as the public did not see this information beforehand. I'd like to make really clear that the residents of downtown Snoqualmie are not interested in Lake Chelan downtown. I've checked out their Riverwalk and I love to vacation there. We're not interested in our homes becoming VRBOs and hotels downtown. That's why the city is keeping the downtown population in general in the dark and not giving us public notices about everything else that's going on. So what you're proposing here, we don't care what Issaquah is doing. We aren't Issaquah, we're Snoqualmie. We are not Lake Chelan. We're not in the desert. We understand that Mike Seal, who is well invested in the development of this town, who is not from this town, also has his little picket place over there in Chelan. We do not care what Lake Chelan is doing. It does not apply to Snoqualmie. So you can go ahead and scratch everything you have on your docket and all the research you did. We're not interested. We're Snoqualmie. We are a town that is a native town. Native. Where is the respect or introduction of the actual history into this downtown in anything that you're talking about? You want to talk about erasing history and dumbing things down and whitewashing things. We'll talk about what James Whitney Mayhew and Joe Johnson are doing right here with the direction of Catherine Ross, who was instilled from Matt Larson. We don't want your Lake Chelan. I like to go vacation there, and I do every year. We're not interested in that. That's not a viable living. Have you talked to the people who work at the hotels in Lake Chelan? They can't afford to live there. And do you know what? Lake Chelan now has problems offering services to the guests who go there because it's unlivable, just like Snoqualmie is becoming, because people like James Whitney Mayhew are too busy traveling the globe looking for friends who want to develop our beautiful little gem here into
30
something
seconds, Ms. Lux.
that people can make money off of. No, this is the downtown redo. This is exactly what we're talking about, the downtown redo. The landing is downtown. That's a Native American historical point right where you're trying to do the Riverwalk where the revetment is. The
10
downtown
seconds, Ms. Lux.
redo downtown redo will involve the history of the natives.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Lux. All right. And I think that concludes public comment based off of our attendees.
Councilmember Benson has his hand up.
Oh, please, Councilmember Benson.
Yeah, I figured if you're taking public comment, it might be okay for me to ask. When you had the verbiage up there for the ordinance, I saw some shoulds in there, like you know what I'm talking about. Should be designed to discourage wildlife access, and I was just wondering if that had been a deliberate decision or discussion about using verbiage like should rather than shall or must, if there was a reason for that wiggle room, which I'm not making a statement for or against. I was just curious.
Okay, sorry, I was looking for my mute button. At this time, we haven't actually discussed that with the Planning Commission regarding, the details of should, shall. Essentially, you can name every version of that. Just for Planning Commissioner reference, there's a distinction in those terminologies as to how required or recommended or suggested the language is. So, for example, should is not as imperative as shall. So oftentimes in code language sections, you'll see a couple of these terms that are very specific to the intent of the language. In this case, there's definitely an opportunity to discuss whether some of these should be more locked in their intent, or if they should merely represent the concepts and ideas. And to make that a little bit more hazy for you, this kind of code language would come into play as we're looking to like a historic design review process too. So you'll see that this language could come up as a way to bring about that conversation and have teeth if the historic design review wanted to review a project on those terms. So I'll go ahead and stop and just I'll leave it there, but Mr. Rogers might have more comment than I do. So I'll leave it.
Not too specifically. I think you nailed it there, Dylan. I will say the one thing we have, of course, learned over time is that when it comes to setting standards that, in this case, this commission sitting as the historical design review can actually point to and use when it's reviewing projects, should being essentially a suggestion is helpful, but ultimately you couldn't necessarily hold somebody to it if they really, really, really didn't want to. Whereas shall, of course, is mandatory. So when we say, so in this case, the language that Mr. Gamble highlighted, on-street loading shall be used when possible. Well, we took a must and then softened it when possible. Well, who determines when possible? It doesn't really say. So, and I'm providing that, I'm not trying to pick on that one particularly. I'm only trying to provide some context here to say that how we write this certainly matters. If you want something, period, end of story, we should say that. We should say, if you want hypothetically on-street loading to be used, we should say on-street loading shall be used, period, and leave it at that. And if somebody wants to step away from that, they can ask for it and show the commission why. But at that point, it's more up to the commission to say, does that work or not? And you can see that in number 2 there a little bit. Service loading and waste enclosures shall be located within buildings, lit or within courtyards, or within a covered enclosure. So those are the 3 places you could put those service loading waste enclosures without they couldn't just stick them in the middle of the parking lot, without anything around them or on top of them, as written that way. So I think it's a good thing to keep in mind as you're looking over the specifics of how it's written, because both the intent here matters, that the commission's broader discussion, but especially now as we're really getting down to the exact details of how it's written, that also matters. And so we need to pay attention to those details now.
It's helpful. Commissioner Goodman.
Thanks. Takes me a second to unmute there. So I'm looking at, so first of all, I guess I see that the bit in the current code about material reflecting the historic architectural requirements has been struck, and I'm wondering if the second to the last item there in green there, is that what's replacing it in terms of you know, following the design standards, generally speaking?
Yeah, that was my intent. I would say that, you know, if you would like that tweaked in terms of how it's written, that's absolutely fine with me. I was kind of struggling with how to describe something like a thematic system, and especially one that wasn't enforced. So kind of going back to those shalls and shoulds and things like that. Just more of a left it in here as an opportunity for the community development director to maintain a theme of screening design that could be enforced across all upcoming, you know, developments, you know, as they go through design review. So I tried to leave that in there. That was definitely a conversation that was had multiple times, and so I tried to reflect it as best I could, and that's where I plucked it from. This is I'm not actually sure the screening designs material must reflect downtown historic architectural requirements. I don't believe that's actually in the code section as it stands. That was added later as part of our comments through this process.
Okay, I mean, I think there's references to specific code sections probably eliminates any doubt. The other thing I wanted to bring up is number 5 here, location, service and loading facilities shall be located at the rear of the building. I wonder how much this, you know, I know we've talked in the past about working on Falls Avenue and trying to get the back of those buildings a bit more standardized and maybe a bit more pedestrian friendly. And I'm wondering if that the inclusion of this kind of undercuts that effort at all. And realizing that, you know, these things have to go somewhere, and for a building, you know, in the middle of the block, there's not really many options besides the back. But just wondering to what extent that, you know, kind of makes any other improvements to Falls Avenue a bit more difficult.
Yeah, I did struggle with sometimes these moments where I wasn't sure how the previous comments led to this moment and whether I should include it as a scratched out item or something like that. I left it in fully. I intend to bring it up here in a minute. For example, you see the locate on alleys when possible. I don't know if you've been in downtown recently, but there's not a lot of alleys that you could be putting your trash receptacles in. So it's not exactly super reflective. I left it in kind of on the chance that the future will be different potentially, and this would be more inclusive to those designs. Even in some of our downtown vision plans and documents like that, they've included concepts of an alley before. And so I left it for this conversation to take place. So I just want you to know that I brought it into here, but I could take it out, and I'll stop talking. Like you guys to give me some feedback there.
Tell me if I'm getting too into the weeds here, but, you know, assuming we're talking about, you know, essentially redoing the whole building, we're not talking about just improvements to an existing building. What are the lot coverage requirements for downtown? I mean, is it the whole property, or do we know? And the reason I ask that is just because taking into account where to put this stuff if a building has to cover most of the lot.
There's a 100% allowance for lots that are less than 10,000 square feet and 80% for greater than, or wait, do I have that backwards?
I think you got it.
Yeah, if they're bigger. So practically speaking, the vast majority of downtown lots are going to be, you know, 100%.
And what would, I mean, then how would this issue be handled in that case?
Probably more on the substantial redevelopments of buildings and things like that. So they're probably still going to include. So not all the buildings are just going to go straight to that 100% lot coverage.
Right.
Though they might, for instance, this code language would definitely take into effect if a major facade change were to happen on a building. So in that case, they wouldn't be changing the amount of lot coverage, and they'd still, you know, a lot of the buildings in downtown would still have parking in the back in in doing so would kind of flick on a switch that says you have to address some of your screening and things like that on the back, or those kinds of additive features that this code language is trying to get at. So yeah, it's not going to catch everything all the time, but it definitely would do something some of the time. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay. Yeah, and we don't have to keep going down the rabbit hole that I'm digging for us, but I guess just suffice to say that my concern here is that and again, it's not like I have a better idea of how to do it, but my concern here is that we're a bit handicapping ourselves in terms of doing more with Falls Avenue.
I saw Commissioner Aliff had your hand up. Did you want to give Councilmember Johnson a chance?
Can I just address that directly? That I think there's also potentially a vision out there floating around that there would be for lack of a better word, a better spot to put waste items for those businesses. There's nothing really specific. There have been ideas tossed around, but I would like to think that that's still somewhere in the long-term vision, so that they wouldn't have a specific trash pickup at every single one of those buildings along Falls Avenue, that there'd be some other place that's more centrally located where all that stuff could go, and then trash pickup could just come to that one spot, and then those back areas would be freed up a lot more if that were to happen. I hope that we can make that happen someday.
I guess we.
I think you could probably go.
Okay. There we go. That was an odd transition. My apologies. May I ask that we can just go through line by line, and if anybody has an issue or wants to talk about each point, we can sort of address it at that point in time. Otherwise, I think we'll end up skipping around and it'll be kind of inefficient. Work? Okay, cool. D1, I had a comment. I didn't know if anybody else did. On D1, I wasn't clear. It seemed rather ambiguous, so I wasn't clear what was being said here and what we were trying to do. Are we asking that facilities should be consolidated or not? Is there opinion here one way or the other? It seems kind of like there's a statement here, but it's not really saying anything. And so as a consequence, I don't know how to interpret it when a project would come along.
Okay. Yeah, so the intent from this code language is definitely to they want the consolidation and sharing of facilities whenever possible. There's definitely going to be moments where that will be impossible or just not sensible, or some combination of these things. So that's why it softens. If it's not possible, then it's not absolutely required, but it is recommended and required if possible. That's what the intent of this sentence is supposed to be.
Is there some overarching language that captures who defines when something is possible and not possible that is applicable here?
Generally, that ends up being a staff interpretation of code language and the intent of the code language. That's generally, I think, what the answer would be.
Okay.
It certainly would be that way, practically speaking, too. For instance, you saw when we've done a lot of the design reviews that, for instance, I've written up a staff report and I'm addressing these lines. Does this project share its receptacles? And I'll say it does or does not, and therefore it does or does not meet the intent of this code section. So,
okay, gotcha. My recommendation would be make it more definitive and clear, like what you want. Like we'll share these things unless it's not possible, and who will make the decision that it's not possible. I think number 2 is super clear. I didn't have any concerns about that. Number 3, I thought was an odd choice. I don't know why we wouldn't discourage wildlife access.
it's more about writing the code language that would allow us to make them, so to speak.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's like if they chose a very, I can't imagine what kind of trash receptacle would be encouraging wildlife, but there's definitely versions that are neutral, so to speak, and that this code language would allow us to make a more strict interpretation of what is actually prohibiting wildlife access.
So is this an example of where it said to be a shall instead of a should?
It could be. This could be a good example of it. I don't know. I don't want to put words in planning commission's mouth there, but
I think it should be shall. This one particularly.
It makes sense to me. I don't think we want animals digging through the trash.
I'm writing these notes down as we go. I won't change them on the screen. That can get a little hairy, especially if we're going through it like this. So I'm writing it down.
Number 4, another question about should versus shall.
So to give some kind of context for this one, just if I may, you
Please.
may consider leaving should here, as there's a huge and wide range of opportunities for how this can be addressed. And so the should or shall is almost a bit of a, there's so much interpretation going on here in that it almost might not matter. You can say shall or should, but the interpretation of what is achieving these things is going to be the actual conversation.
Okay.
But I'm happy to put down what you'd like.
We vote for should on this one as well for those same reasons.
Okay.
You mean shall?
No, should.
Should.
Yeah, there's so much variability down here. Like you're going to have enough problems with that, let alone with a shall.
It is a should currently. So
Yeah, I say keep it that way.
oh, okay, okay, because the other one is a should, but you suggested it be a shall. I'm sorry. You know what? I am going to change these as we go, and I'm just going to make them all caps or something crazy like that, so I can, so you guys can keep track of it with me.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry.
Any comments on number 5? How about number 6?
Nothing from me.
Perfect. There we go. Thank you. Thank you for accommodating my line by line.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I got my notes, not as detailed as I thought. I will go ahead and scroll down to the lower end. I think I'd say the final section of this, which is definitions. Now, this might seem a bit odd. So just for a quick concept of how code language is written for everyone. In almost every, not necessarily every chapter, but a lot of chapters will have a definition section to explain terms that can be used almost as jargon to remove the possibility for ambiguity in how some shoulds and shalls are actually spent out. So if there was a shall be really pretty and awesome, it better define pretty and awesome in the upper section. Otherwise, it's going to be completely unusable as a definition, so to speak. So in this instance, you'll see, a lot of these kinds of catching phrases. And to reduce the possibility of jargon, there's a lot of land use restrictions in this. And so that's why there's a definitions section. In this definition section is where Jason and I were discussing how to include the concepts from the downtown master plan, Snoqualmie's downtown master plan, and the vision plan, which here's 2 hyperlinks. They're enormous documents. And they crash my computer if I try to open them half the time. So you can review them there. But in the previous sessions discussing this, we have these 2 documents from 2005 and 2010 that call out kind of goals and visions, ideas, so to speak, of downtown. And some of them included, a more Falls Avenue frontage type approach, and actually a lot of things about parking and there's a lot of ideas that are in there. I encourage you to go review them. The goal of including them in this section of the definitions is to allow the opportunity for Planning Commission to reference these documents in review of development projects. So currently there is no reference to them and no teeth, so to speak, in these documents. They're just, they're just ideas that somebody wrote down and they're great, but if they're not connected to the code sections like this, in this section, it's difficult for Planning Commission to reference them in any of their grand ideas or concepts in any sort of development review process, as we've seen before. We have to review a project based on the code language that exists. And so this is a way to bring those two documents into play. There was many ways to possibly do this, but Jason and I felt that this was a succinct way to achieve it. And so, yeah, I'll leave it there and see if you have any thoughts or comments.
No, that's quite helpful. I know on my end, I still need to get through that master plan is where I started out, but I'm very appreciative that y'all linked to that. So thank you. Commissioner Goodman, you had some?
Yes, I think it's great to add these definitions. I am wondering if it's necessary to include the name of the consultant in it, though.
I think I'm going to get rid of that part. I just left it in here because I've accidentally called them the same thing a few times in my head. So I left it in here because I wrote it out really quickly. I saw that I made a mistake. I saw it in the agenda and I left it because I didn't want to resend the agenda with this correction. So yeah, I'm going to nix that. It's approved by resolution. That's clear enough. But thank you. I'm going to go ahead and write it down so I don't forget again.
I think it's more that calling it the Callison plan is for better or worse, long been the shorthand for the vision plan. So, but you're right. We should refer to it by its formal name and not necessarily by who wrote it. We would refer to the current Shoreline Master Program as the Jason Rogers Shoreline Master Program, for example, even though I would be quite embarrassed in that case.
Awesome. And so just so I'm clear, this was just for discussion as we move along and cover the whole thing ultimately, but we're not actually taking a position tonight, right?
No, actually, well, sorry, you're not taking an official position tonight. However, in terms of timing, this is essentially, if there's no big major issues, this is essentially the moment where I'm going to now transition the worksheet, which is what I've been calling this document, into a ordinance format, which would allow us to actually change the code section. It's going to look a bit different. It's also going to be a public hearing for the public to review the suggested code changes and a couple other details like that. But generally, I left it in this worksheet format because it's the easiest way to kind of work through the documents. However, so in a sense, it's not final. You're not voting on anything per se, but if this is unedited or needs very minimal editing, like the one suggested tonight, then I will go ahead and begin the process of transferring it over to then bring the public hearing, ordinance modification version of it to Planning Commission at the next time we can.
Got it. Well, I think that the feedback was given. Do any commissioners object to proceeding on and getting this published in proposed ordinance form? Okay, then I think Dylan, if that's the next step, you're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. please.
Sorry to interrupt. So what we'll do is we'll put in that format, and we will notice a public hearing for your next meeting. At that point, you can take formal public comment. You certainly heard, what we would call informal public comment to date. We'll take formal public comment. The commission can have further discussion, and if you're ready to make a recommendation to the city council, you can do that. If you were to do that, this would proceed then to the Community Development Committee and the full council after that. And if you're not ready, that's also fine. You can continue discussing it and ironing out any further details or tweaks that you that the commission feels are needed.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, awesome. I think that covers our downtown relook discussion for this meeting. And then again, in the approved agenda, we struck the comprehensive plan docket. So that just leaves other business. Items for planning commissioner interest. Did any commissioners have anything specific on their minds? I can do a roll call, or if you just want to raise your hand. Okay, I'll do a quick roll call. Bear with me. I'm going screen to screen here. I'll start with you, Commissioner Aliff. Did you have any other items of business?
I just wanted to do a quick check-in on the status of the state transportation package. We had a few things in there that were pertinent to our community, and I just wanted to see where it stood. I had lost track of it myself. So
right now, the package is still very much alive. The legislature has been, I will call it, tweaking the revenue side of things. You'll recall there was or maybe you don't recall because you're not paying super close attention, but there was a tax on exported refined oil products present in there, which the states of Oregon and Alaska most notably strongly objected to. And so the legislature has apparently decided to remove that provision, which of course means they need to find more revenue to pay for the package. Those discussions are still underway, is my understanding. The project list is still intact. So we, of course, remain hopeful that it will stay that way. You heard from Councilmember Johnson at the beginning of the meeting about the council's actions regarding the Parkway, sending a letter to our state legislators about the city council support for exploring converting the Parkway to an extension of SR 18, which would help with that funding allocation. And of course, the Highway 18 widening project from Deep Creek over to Issaquah Hobart Road remains a very high priority for this city and other cities in the Southeast King County area, and of course for the state delegation for largely safety reasons, if nothing else. So I think we're in pretty good shape, but with the legislature, never say never.
thanks for that summary.
Anything else for you, Commissioner Aliff?
No, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Goodman.
Nothing from me, thanks.
All right, Commissioner Lambert.
Nothing for me.
Thank you. And Commissioner Smith.
I was just gonna make note to everyone. I shared a note with Jason and Gwen and the chair earlier today, just as a heads up that we got the Little League schedule 2 weeks ago, and practices are Mondays and Wednesdays. They start at 5 o'clock right now, but I think they'll get pushed back a little bit later as the days get a bit longer. I'll make best effort to get as soon as I can, although being springtime, half of them get rained out anyway. So, but if I am late to a few meetings, that's why.
Perfect. Thank you. And no new items for me. Is there anything else to be covered that we missed from any of the commissioners? Oh, Mr. Gamble, Dylan.
Sorry, I'm not a commissioner. I realized. Sorry, Jason, you want to go first and I'll come after?
Nope, go ahead.
I was just gonna mention that the historic design review for the Hovinga or the Rails project that many of you reviewed back in, I believe it was the 18th of January. It was approved, as you all know. However, after that, the approval was appealed. And so City Council will be reviewing the appeal per our, code section on appeal processes for historic design review. So we just wanted to let you know that that was happening. There's nothing to do per se. It's just the process is going to be moving forward that way. If you wanted to, review the materials or listen in to the City Council meeting, you can find the information on the city website, or you can ask us. We can probably help get you the details that way too.
Is there like a quick one line on what the nature of the appeal was?
Jason, we can
objection
share
was?
everything, right? There's no.
Oh, yeah, it's the appeals were without. I don't want to necessarily characterize the appeals overly specifically, because they can stand on their own. But the gist of it is that the appeals largely disagreed with the Commission's decision as it relates to the height, mass, bulk of building and its integration with the historic district. It is the nutshell version. At this point, it's for the council to decide. Dylan kind of touched on it, but I want to emphasize that no matter what happens, whether the council denies the appeal, upholds the appeal, none of you should feel as if you did anything wrong or improper. This is, appeals happen because reasonable people can disagree sometimes. And, if the council upholds the appeal and the project has to change or comes back to the commission, that's fine. It happens. We would walk you through the process, if that were to happen. And if they deny the appeal, then that would be the end of it. So don't worry about it.
No, I appreciate that. That's helpful. All right. Did you have anything else?
I think Commissioner Aliff has a question.
Please, Commissioner Aliff.
Just a clarifying question on the appeal, please. I think I know the answer, but I just wanted to make certain. So the concern specifically was about the building being too tall, not about the offsets from the side, which were not to the lot line. Was that correct?
So I don't believe there was actually a single appeal that referenced lot line or setback issues.
Okay.
I do believe most of them regarded the height limits, and I think a few of them even possibly referenced some language regarding there's like an architectural or site standards that refer to style of buildings and design and stuff like that. Generally, so I can share with you the materials for the council agenda packet when it comes out here soon, and then that should kind of walk through all the appeal details.
The council agenda is usually published Thursday evening. Sometimes it pushes into Friday, depending on how we're doing on preparing the agenda and all of its attachments. So you can, I would suggest you can look at the council agenda when it's published. All of the appeals will be attached to that agenda in the agenda bill. There will be a staff report in there that has an administration recommendation on what the council should do. So you can read it for yourself.
Great. Thank you.
And draw your conclusions. This appeal will be heard at next Monday's council meeting. So Monday the 14th, the meeting will start at 6 p.m. I don't know where on the agenda this is going to fall. That will be something for the Finance and Administration Committee to work out tomorrow evening at their meeting. Likely it'll come early on in the agenda for various reasons. But as Dylan said, it's an open public meeting. You're welcome to watch, welcome to read all the materials. As an appeal, participation will be limited to those people who filed an appeal and of course the council and city staff members. So it's not an open public hearing like you would get for other items. It's very limited in that way. And that's due to various state laws and court decisions that govern things like this.
Yeah. Oh, and Jason, one last thing to add to that. The council does not have to make a decision at next Monday's meeting. So they're required to hear the project and the appeals, but they're not required to make the decision yet. So it's possible that could wait.
You can sleep on it.
They could, yeah.
Yeah. There's also a provision, so the Open Public Meetings Act, in fact, has several exceptions as to what needs to be done in the open. Council deliberations on what are called quasi-judicial land use matters, of which this is one, are one of those exceptions. So it is entirely possible that council could essentially be in open session, hear from the appellants and city staff in open session, and then go into what's called a closed session to deliberate, and then only emerge from a closed session to make a formal decision. It has happened before. It's reasonably common for various reasons. So again, there's nothing untoward there. It's often what they like to do.
Thank you for the update.
All right.
The only other updates I had was on upcoming schedule. As you heard earlier, we'll schedule a public hearing for the downtown relook on the 21st. We will also bring the comprehensive plan docket items back on the 21st. We'll have 2 of them instead of just the 1, so I can catch back up on the schedule. Again, I apologize for that. And those are the couple of things for now. We don't have any design review board items on deck at the moment. No signs or new buildings or anything like that, so I wouldn't be expecting those. And Councilmember Johnson has a hand up.
I'll assume that that's recognition from the chair.
Please, thank you.
Thank you. Just one little kind of housekeeping item was this is the acting chair's discretion, which would be the vice chair, would be to either excuse or explicitly not excuse members of the commission who are not present. So you may decide to take that action. Just sort of as an FYI to the vice chair here, what the code says is that it is actually technically up to the sole discretion of the chair, which I would assume would include acting chair, although I don't think it says that. Though in the past, the way that we've done it in practice is that we have taken a motion and voted as a group, and then approved or not approved the absent members.
Thank you. Yes, very helpful. Okay, perfect. Well, I'll take that recommendation. Motion to approve to excuse the absences of Chair Markusiak and Commissioner Mather. Do I hear a motion to approve? Okay, thank you, Commissioner Smith. Seconded?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Lambert. And those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. All right, ayes have it. So moved. And thank you, Councilmember Johnson.
I believe Commissioner Lambert has a question or commenters.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, I forgot. The awning that's over that's being rebuilt in downtown Snoqualmie.
Yes.
Are we no approvals or anything for that?
You're referring to the one at the corner of River and Railroad, or is this a different one?
It's the one right over the ice cream shop in the new Snoqualmie store, and they tore it apart and have it up on blocks.
Mm-hmm. I'll let Dylan, you're on top of that one, right?
Yeah, so I was in talks with the owner to make sure that there wasn't any requirements, but they're replacing the awning with the exact same specs as before. So this doesn't qualify as a opportunity for review, or opportunity is the right word there, but a situation in which there'd be historic design review. There is building permits review to verify that the building was, or the awning was built to the standard that it was before. That's always required, but it's not required to check back in with historic design review.
More specifically, as a repair replacement, it's not subject to board review and approval. It is subject to historical design review effectively by me. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that we're not even looking at, because we certainly are, but it does not require, as a straight replacement, it does not require board approval.
Okay, thanks.
All right. We covered upcoming schedules. So any other items before we adjourn for the evening?
did want to get a quick plug in. I'll make this the next meeting too. You might, some of you who have been on the commission a little longer might recall the mill site project has been out there for a number of years now. Because an appeal of the final environmental impact statement, let me say that slower, was filed by a group. The appeal of the FEIS and the public hearing and recommendation for the PCI plan itself is now in front of the hearing examiner instead of the planning commission. The public hearing on the PCI plan itself will be on March 30th of this month. So that's a Wednesday, beginning at 4 p.m. It's on Zoom. There'll be several notices published. We're going to get the first one out this week, get it on the website and everything. That is an open public hearing. Anybody can show up. The hearing examiner will give you, I'm not sure if it's going to be 3 minutes or 5 minutes or what, but she will determine how many minutes people have. You can submit written comments. So this is your opportunity. If you have any thoughts, comments on the mill site, the Snoqualmie mill plan, that's your opportunity. The appeal of the FEIS will be heard the following week. That's a closed, because it's an appeal, that will be a closed proceeding. Only the appellants, the city, and the applicants will be involved in that, but it is an open meeting. You can certainly show up to watch. So wanted to let you all know that that's happening, because I know many of you were anticipating working through that project early this year, and it's of course not going to happen for the planning commission.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everyone for working through this with me. I appreciate it. Thank you for the little the plugs there. So thank you. I think if that is it, we will adjourn for tonight.
I move to adjourn.
All right. Seconded.
Second.
Thank you. So moved. Have a good night, everyone.
Oh, aye.
Supposed to vote, but, you know.
Do that. We got to do the yays and nays. Man, I'll get
Thanks,
there.
Andre.
Yes, I'm getting there. I'm getting
Thanks.
there.
Hey, for first time through.
Yeah, very well done.
No. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right. So moved. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Take care.
Good night.